Guys, today I want to talk to you about a very exciting upcoming game, Honor of Kings World, which is also the sponsor of this video. This game, which is coming to both PC and mobile, is an open-world action RPG with heavy multiplayer elements. A few trailers of it were shown in the latest Gamescom, so you might have heard of it there. It primarily presents itself with beautiful graphics and an immersive-looking world, inspired by Eastern aesthetics and culture. You might have heard about the Honor of King name before, and that's because this game is part of one of the most popular brands in the history of Chinese gaming. In fact, the original Honor of King is a MOBA with record-breaking revenue that released globally just 1 year ago. Personally, I've always been curious about the franchise, mainly because its revenue is really impressive, and so I've always wanted to know what was up with it, and now that they're expanding its universe with a multiplayer action RPG, which is more my cup of tea, I'm definitely interested in what they plan on doing. I want to make one thing clear right off the bat: it doesn't seem like this game is a gacha, but rather is more like an MMO type. For the monetization, I haven't heard anything clear yet, but it seems like they want to monetize the game through skins rather than character abilities, which will definitely be a huge plus for the health of the game. As for the gameplay, the combat is definitely what looked the most impressive to me. At first glance, looking at it, you can probably notice many things that look similar to other popular games of the genre, but the more I saw, the more intrigued I became, because I really think the developers are cooking something nice here. The most interesting part is that you can select 1 out of 11 classes for your characters, and you can control up to 2 characters at once, which you can freely switch during combat. Each of these classes has a distinct type of abilities and combat style, so each will have a role that they can uniquely fulfill. While being able to control different types of characters with different types of abilities is nothing original, what caught my attention is how it blends in with the multiplayer structure of the game. You can form a team of 4 with your friends to take on giant bosses, and each of the players will have access to 2 characters, which effectively means the team will have 8 characters at its disposal to face all of the obstacles of the fights. This seems to me like a more flexible formula compared to typical MMOs, where you often have a single character that covers a specific role, because it allows you to switch things up in battle depending on what the team needs. For example, just brainstorming here, if a boss requires more than 1 tank in one section of the fight where it deals more damage, you could initially have a comp of 1 tank, 2 DPSs and 1 healer, and then a DPS could switch to a tank type character during the sequence that demands more defensive abilities from the team. Or, for example, if there is a boss that is initially on the ground but later on flies around, a player could use both a melee and a long-range DPS, so he could switch between them depending on what the boss does and keep their damage output consistent. Overall, I think this system really allows for a lot of possibilities, both from a boss design standpoint and from a player control standpoint, so I really like it. The combat itself is really flashy, kinda reminds me of Wuthering Waves, both in terms of animation qualities and technical characteristics. In particular, they implemented a dodge and parry system, which opens up for a skill-based gameplay that is meant to reward players that put hours and hours into learning enemies' mechanics and so on. The bosses also have the typical endurance white bar, which will deplete the more you hit them and counter them, and once it reaches 0, they will get stunned and you will be able to inflict more damage. Abilities-wise, it seems to me characters mainly have 3 normal abilities and 1 ultimate, which is typical in MOBA-style games, and since this is the tie-in of a MOBA, that makes sense. There is also another ability that is more like a support effect, because it summons a monster that attacks the opponent. Nothing really new here, but within the structure of the game, it all seems exciting to me. The enemies shown so far also look very cool, and they seem quite diverse and challenging in terms of what they can do. The boss fight in the latest Gamescom trailer has you fighting the Bifang, which is a beast inspired by the ancient Chinese myth Shanhai Jing. I hope I pronounced it right. This boss alternates ground and aerial sequences, the second of which will be paired with large AoE attacks that your team will have to endure, to then focus on damaging the boss again once he lands on the ground. Then the Crimson Beast, an opponent that is also present in the original Honor of Kings game. He is, as the name implies, a hellish-looking beast with fire and lava elements. During this fight, you'll have to take advantage of covers on the field to protect yourself from attacks whose hit range is pretty much the entire stage. The Airsim, a huge monkey-looking enemy, is more of the mobile and nifty type, with attacks that seem to have hitboxes that are tricky to predict. So it's definitely an opponent you'd want to approach cautiously instead of trying to deal as much damage as possible. There are also more static opponents whose abilities focus on impacting the field from a positional standpoint, introducing a platform type of gameplay in a game that could grow stale if it was entirely about button mashing the same keys over and over again. It definitely seems more diverse and dynamic than classic MMOs to me. In this regard, it's more similar to classic action RPGs, which I prefer. This, coupled with a whole multiplayer thing, makes for a combat system that is looking really promising. For the rest, in case you forgot, this is an open world game, and it seems to offer plenty of exploration-based gameplay in wide areas all different from each other in colors and characteristics. This is where the graphical qualities of the game really shine, in my opinion. It feels really nice even to just look at the environment shown in the trailers. I'm not quite sure about it all, honestly, because the developers have shown much more about the combat than the open world, but since this game has MMO elements, I am gonna assume that there is a lot of farming involved with the open world, and so maybe with a job type system with things like cooking or blacksmith, I don't know, it could even enrich the combat even more, and that's exciting. Something I noticed is that dungeons include puzzles that are easier to solve if you're playing with friends, as they can be made easier by using specific elemental abilities or by simply synchronizing movements and decisions with the other members of the team. Also, from what I've personally heard, the game promises to have a more laid-back component as well, that will allow you to enjoy the world either by yourself or with your friends, in a casual and relaxing way. So maybe in the future we could also see gameplay elements like housing and stuff like that, just to introduce more ways for you to take a break from the combat while still enjoying your time spent in game. So overall, the game is looking pretty promising, and the development-wise, it feels like it's in an advanced state already, which makes me hope we could see it released by next year at latest. If you're interested in Honor of Kings World, I'll remind you that this game is coming out on both PC and mobile, and I invite you to subscribe to the official website to stay up to date with the latest news. And bye bye.